According to Poland's Digital Affairs Minister Krzysztof Gawkowski, he said that the government has detected Russian attempts to influence the presidential election in Poland and use false information to break up the cohesion of the political scene. So how to combat with this without violating the freedom of expression? And have we seen such a situation that has delivered a major change in a political direction before? Now, joining me to discuss this and other matters is Kerry Longhurst, professor at Collegium Civitas. Hello, Kerry, and thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for asking me.
Now, with this latest information from the Polish government, what should be the reaction to combat Russian dis- and misinformation?
Well, I think the main thing is, as you mentioned before, this has been going on for years. I think we can point to various elections in the recent past which have for sure been shaped to some degree by Russian interference through different types of channels in different ways. What can we do? Well, as you said, the dilemma is between how do we protect our democracy, allow freedom of speech, but also guard against these types of malign influences. And all I would say is that what we have to focus upon is really safeguarding, promoting and strengthening our democratic institutions, our electoral codes, our electoral commissions, our voting procedures, our parliamentary systems to kind of mitigate and prevent these types of influences before they even begin. So to strengthen our institutions is, I think, the most kind of secure way.
One government official in one of our reports just here said that students, be them in high school or maybe in college, you're a professor, should be schooled up, if you will, so that they can source information better and try and determine what is mis- or disinformation and what are reliable.
Yeah, I mean, I think education is a key part of those types of activities that we should be pursuing, beginning at the very, primary level all the way through our lives and into adult education as well, to get those kind of key literacy skills to be able to recognise what is fake news and what isn't. So I think it's an ongoing procedure for sure.
Now, I'd like to turn to the UK and Brexit. How do you think did misinformation contribute to the vote to leave the European Union?
Yes, yes and yes again. There's plenty of very solid, very good quality journalism which has proved without doubt that external influences, however we describe them, were very strong, very present in that pre-Brexit period and definitely shaped people's perceptions and understandings of the truth and of facts, for sure.
And that had real-life consequences.
Real life, deep, far-reaching, and the kind of consequences that which are really hard to return, definitely.
Certainly. And now, touching upon the recent visit by Prime Minister Keir Starmer here to Poland, the United Kingdom has a military presence in Estonia, a smaller one here in Poland. Weapons deals are being made. The British Navy is involved in the Baltic Sea security. So how important is the eastern flank of NATO for the UK right now? And do you see more British interest and involvement in our region here?
I think for certain, I mean, as you know, this British involvement in this part of Europe has been growing steadily over time. And the UK has always maintained this NATO-first policy. And there's cross-parliamentary support for this type of action. The public opinion is behind a kind of enhanced or an augmented British presence in the region. So I think things have only really, got started in terms of our defence commitment to this part of Europe. But I'd like to add that it's not just about defence. If you look at the speeches that went on while Starmer was here in the UK, in Poland recently, he was also talking about cooperation in terms of border management, in terms of human rights and security, in terms of energy security. So I think Britain's presence here is not just and shouldn't just be understood in terms of defence. It's a broad range of governance issues as well, where I think Poland, the UK and other regional partners will cooperate more on much more strongly in the next months and years.
Right. One thing that's interesting, not many people know that British soldiers have been assisting the Polish Border Patrol since 2021, secure the border. Why is that such an issue? Are there immigrants that make it through Poland and eventually try and make it to the British Isles?
I mean, you'd have to look at the migration flows and the data on that, but I think for certain part of Britain's interest is to kind of stem the flow of illegal or irregular migration before it comes across the rest of the European continent until it gets to the UK. But like I said, I think the UK is not just interested in stopping the migration flows. It's all about tackling the root causes of migration and improving governance on both sides of the borders.
We talked about Brexit. There used to be a lot of Poles living in the United Kingdom. Many have left, but many still remain. Meanwhile, there's growing influence of the British diaspora here. What do you think the importance of both of these diasporas are, and does this bring Poles and Brits closer together?
I think it does. The Polish-UK diaspora looking both ways is very strong. And you said that people have kind of moved back post-Brexit, which is true. But also, as you said, lots of families have stayed in place on both sides. It's a diaspora which is present in so many levels, business, society, academia, public policy. So I think it is a diaspora on both sides that really does matter and contributes to national debates on both sides.
And finally, one last Brexit question, and this is the big one. Will there ever be a rethink or an attempt to rejoin the European Union? We've seen it be quite rocky and quite disastrous and quite costly. Do you think that's a possibility, or has that ship sailed on forever?
Well, I think disastrous and costly are the main words to bear in mind. You can see where my perspectives are. The problem is that whereas I think most voters would like to see a reversal of Brexit, if you looked at opinion polls now, many people who voted to leave before would now vote to remain. But the problem is that in the UK, these wounds are still very open. There's a lot of kind of sore people out there who suffered from Brexit, and we're not quite ready, I think, to have a proper debate about rejoining. But within the next generation, I think we can see the UK back in the European Union where it belongs, for sure. But we've got to have a staged debate about that, an inclusive debate about the need to rejoin and not just rush it through.
Right. Do you think that may be somewhat from a political stubbornness, if you will, or from maybe some of the politicians not wanting to admit the obvious that indeed it was the wrong decision? It was
a wrong decision, for sure. There's a nervousness, for sure. There's a sensitivity in the country about Brexit as a whole. The whole word, the word makes everyone kind of shudder and feel quite nervous. But the fact is as well, in the UK Parliament, you have this small group of very kind of strong-willed, sharp elbows, strong voices, kind of, Brexity people, Brexity MPs. And, once you start the rejoin discussion in the UK, these politicians are going to be very vociferous, stir up trouble, stir up chaos. So we have to have a carefully paced discussion about rejoining. And like I said, one which is inclusive and sober and calm, which the Brexit was not at all.
Okay. Well, Kerry Longhurst, professor at Collegium Civitas, thank you very much for joining me. I appreciate your thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
And that concludes this edition of World News Tonight. Thank you all for watching. Have a wonderful evening, and we'll see you soon. Good night.